Hey Spartans, it's Dr. L here, your Chief Mind Doc here at Spartan. Now, today we're talking about increasing your mental flexibility. What is that, right? Well, it's about being more flexible up here, stretching your perspective, allowing yourself to adjust to certain situations, certain relationships in a way that may feel uncomfortable for you. Listen, we all know what physical stretching is, right? What being flexible in our body means. Yeah, so when you're out on the race course, what does it help you do? Prevent injury and help you recover a little bit better. Well, the same is true in life. When we allow ourselves to be a little bit more mentally flexible, then we get less bogged down by stress and by those other emotions that sometimes don't make you feel so great, right? And it can actually improve our relationships and improve our effectiveness at work. All right, so what are some of the ways that you can become more mentally flexible? So the first is to question the norm, to question what you've always been doing, right? So oftentimes over the last decade of working with my clients, I've heard them say things like, well, but I've always done it that way, or that's the way it's always been. Okay, well, just because it's always been that way, does it have to be that way now, right? Think about mom's mac and cheese. 15 years ago, it was delicious. Well, guess what? It was made with Velveeta. Velveeta, not so great for you, right? So now mac and cheese made with almond milk. How does that sound? Delicious, right? Oh, but it's never been that way. Okay, well, start thinking about it a little bit differently. I know mac and cheese might sound like a too silly example, but the key part of that is that you're thinking about something in the past, something that's always been a certain way and therefore must be. We have to allow ourselves the flexibility of change, right? And knowing that sometimes change in that beginning period can be kind of difficult, but then it kind of turns out a little bit awesome, right? So that second part then is positive thinking, is thinking, okay, if I'm mentally flexible now, what is my payoff going to be, right? So if I think about things a little bit differently now, or if I'm not so rigid and controlling, how might that benefit me in the future? That's another way of allowing ourselves to kind of increase our mental capacity and be a little bit more flexible, is when we think about what is the payoff going to be. Now, another part of mental flexibility is practicing it. What's a great way to do that? Games. I know, another silly example. Here I am, Chief Mind Doc of Spartan, and I'm telling you to play chess. But seriously, games can actually help you develop a greater mental capacity for being flexible. Why? Because games are uncertain. You go into it not knowing how it's going to go. Monopoly, best game ever, like the best way to practice flexibility, because you don't know which properties you're going to buy. You don't know whether or not you're going to get bankrupt. You don't know who's going to land on your spot. It's about being flexible. It's about not always having that predictability and consistency. And we need to practice that. What's another great way? Start writing with your non-dominant hand. I know, Dr. L, what is she recommending? But seriously, if you're right-handed and you start writing with your left hand, first, how does it feel? Super uncomfortable, right? And what's the product? Something super messy, right? Well, that's okay. After time, and as you build up, you begin to get better at it, right? And then you feel pride, you feel kind of excited because you're a little bit ambidextrous, whatever it is. But the goal is, and the idea behind it is that you have to practice that flexibility, and it's going to feel uncomfortable. And the product is probably going to be messy in all things, not just handwriting. And you have to tolerate that. That's just a key part of being a Spartan, right? And we know what it's like to tolerate something messy. So get in there and practice. Allow yourself to kind of be uncomfortable in something that you might be thinking about. Okay, so how does that apply to maybe not mac and cheese or Monopoly? Well, the way that it applies is this. Let's say you get to work and all of a sudden you have to work with a completely new team. What comes up for you? But I've never worked with that team before. Okay, well, what might the payoff be of working with this team? What if this team actually accelerates you into a different position, a better position, right? Okay, what's the other one? Well, it's really uncomfortable because I've never worked with these people before. Yeah, of course it's going to be. It's like writing with your left hand. You got to practice it. You got to be in the room with them. You got to sit with them. You got to get to know them. You got to relate to them. And then you're going to feel more comfortable eventually, right? It's about practice. Okay, so I want you practicing mental flexibility. Play Monopoly. Get some mac and cheese with almond milk, whatever it is. Put yourself in a position where you have to kind of expand your flexibility and your mental capacity to tolerate what's in front of you. It's going to allow you to be more flexible. And the more flexible we are in life, the better relationships we have, the more efficient we are at work. And guess what? The more creative we are too. I just thought about mac and cheese and Monopoly. Who's the flexible one now? I'll see you next time.
This episode of Spartan Up is brought to you by Wine for Runners. the makers of the new official Spartan brand wine. Visit wineforrunners.com/Spartan. That's wine, the number 4, runners.com/Spartan.